All right, here we are looking at the three models of the P365, the Standard, the XL, and the SAS models. All have the tactical trigger P365 Trigger Kit installed. So let's look quickly at what the performance looks like. So you got a short take up, hard to find wall, really short crisp break, nice short reset back on the wall. Okay, XL, same thing. This is the standard flat trigger, short break, short reset, and the SAS model, short take up, hard wall, short reset. Okay, then some of the compatibility considerations are when using the fully reduced PreTravel, you need a modified backplate, so there's a mod right there. And then also takedown is the same, however sometimes what can happen is the slide catch doesn't release fully, so you just need to hit that and then it drops. So you can eliminate that behavior if you just increase the PreTravel slightly by adjusting the PreTravel stop. Okay, so with that, let's get into the install. Okay, so here we are ready to install. First steps are you going to safety check, make sure there's no ammo present, so it looks like we got a clear gun. I don't need to fire to take down, so hit the slide catch, drop the takedown lever, pull back, release the slide, set the slide aside, and there's small parts here, so make sure you're in an area, safety glasses, whatnot for all that. So you're going to remove the grip module from the fire control unit by hitting that pin. Let's set that pin aside. Then pull the back of the grip module up and then wiggle it out. Okay, set the grip module aside. Okay, now we have our fire control unit, and some of the parts that we're gonna be familiar with here are, of course, we got the slide catch, the takedown lever. This one is the safety lever pin. The safety lever here is this part here that moves up and down. Here is the Sear, and the Sear spring pushes it back up. Okay, so want to be familiar with that. And then over here you've got the trigger bar, trigger shoe, and your disconnector. Then your trigger spring is back here. We're going to try to make sure this is as straightforward as possible without taking everything apart. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with Seer Engagement. So we go to your Seer Engagement pack, and you'll have in there your 3 Seer control springs, and if you have a manual safety version, you'd have your manual safety. So at this point, you might, if you had a manual safety, you'd remove that, and you'd be careful to catch the spring and detent as you remove that, and we'll look at the installation of that at the end of the video, as opposed to in line here. I'll note where it should happen, but okay, so I'm going to grab Seer control springs. I'm going to, on this one, I already have done install before, so I know what it needs. Just to speed this up, I'm going to go ahead and move like I'm doing a drop-in kind of configuration where I'm not really concerned about getting the absolute best break reset distance possible. So I'm going to use the Seer control spring number 3 as we talk about. That's going to give me the highest chance of success there, and it's going to give me a little bit more travel in there, potentially more of a rolling break. So but just for simplicity of install sake, I'm going to install that one. So you don't want to mix up these Seer control springs, so keep them in their pack until you're ready to use them. I'm just going to set that there to the side while I do that. Okay, in order to remove the safety lever pin, this Seer control spring installs in the fire control unit around the safety lever pin. So I'm going to first pull that safety lever pin. So I'm going to move the takedown lever so I can get a screwdriver, flathead screwdriver, and pull that up slightly. Okay, at that point it's pulled out enough that my safety lever will drop free. So I'll set that aside, make sure I don't drop that. And then I don't want to remove this safety lever pin completely because the Sear spring here is partially retained on a ledge by that, and if you remove it fully, most of the time you can get away with doing it without that Sear spring dropping back down in, but if it does, then it's kind of a pain and you have to go through extra hassle to do that. So I'm just going to try to pull the safety lever pin just out to where it's just barely in, and I'm looking inside the fire control unit here to see where that pin is, and I'm just going to get it almost flush, if not flush, and then I'm ready for install of my Sear control spring. So I'm going to set that down for a second, and you got to be careful with these the levers and bars and stuff here, because they will come out if you start pulling on them and whatnot, so be careful as you're handling this. Okay, I'm going to take just a toothpick and my Sear control spring, my number 3 Sear control spring. I'm going to kind of wedge that on the toothpick there, like that. And I'm going to be careful, you know, in the area that I am, that I'm not going to lose a spring or anything. Okay, then I'm going to come in the back of the fire control unit and come down here to get that started into position. Okay, and then I'm just going to work on sliding that down in there. Okay, so that slid in pretty good. So I'm going to take over now with just my flathead screwdriver. I'm going to pull that toothpick back out. Okay, and then this adjusts the ride height of the Sear. So I am going to go ahead and either push the Sear down or push the takedown lever, which that Sear just popped by that, so I'd have to hold that. So I'm just going to go ahead and hold the Sear down, and I'm going to push that spring so that it's in position for, as I start to push this safety lever pin back in, it's just sliding over it. Okay, so now it's in there over the safety lever pin, and as I kind of push on the Sear here, it will let me start to seat that pin almost completely. So I'm just twisting it a little bit. I'm holding down on the Sear to get it to seat, and then what I want is I want it to come through cleanly on the other side, ready to reinstall this safety lever. Okay, so I got it a little misaligned. So there we go. Now it's ready. If I just push down on that Sear, I can push it all the way through. See? So I know that it's good and it's installed in there. So I'm just going to back it out again, and then I'm going to look in here to make sure that it's flush, ready to install this. Now I like to just do this blind. You can take off the trigger spring, remove the trigger bar and the disconnector, and there's a through hole there that you can view alignment, or use your tool as a slave pin and then push it through. That works as well, but I just prefer to do this method, which is you note the correct alignment of your safety lever, you put it back in. Okay, and you noted at the beginning that it was kind of like in that position. So I'm just going to kind of play with it. I'm going to push a little pressure. I'll need to depress that a little bit. Okay, so it's not going in quite yet. So I'm going to come down here to the back where that little safety lever is. I'm just going to push up slightly until I can find the right spot, and then I'm going to push it back. Okay, there, I found it. So it was pretty quick to do it that way. Okay, then I can look at my Sear ride height. You know, it's notably a little bit reduced from where it was in the stock position. Okay, and everything's retained. If something popped out here, you got to make sure that everything's back in correct orientation. But that is the most complicated part of the install, is the Sear control spring installation, and that's the simple way to do it. Okay, now you're ready to move on. So I've got my Sear control spring. At this point, I would install my manual safety, and I'll just go ahead and show that. This will be easy to do at this point. I'm not going to install the spring and detent. That can be done later, but so I'm gonna not completely install this, but you'll find the correct orientation. You'll put it in the slot of the fire control unit that it's made for. Okay, and there it is. Okay, so now with this modified version, I have to rotate it clockwise and then push it in. Okay, then rotate it back. So if you noticed, see, it started here, then I rotate clockwise, push in, then rotate back counterclockwise, and then so now I've got a functional safety. And this has been adjusted so that it will work with that slightly reduced Seer engagement. Okay, so I'm going to remove that because we're not using this. So sometimes you got to pull the trigger just a hair to let that by. Okay, so we'll set that aside. That's how you would have installed your manual safety. Okay, now next let's go to the PreTravel. So in my PreTravel pack, I've got my PreTravel stop. So I'm going to grab my PreTravel stop. Okay, and this is a pretty easy install. This has kind of a C shape to it. This bigger tab here, there's a pretty tiny part, so be careful not to lose it. This tab here goes on the front of the fire control unit, and the back part goes under the front of the trigger. So I'm just going to take the trigger, pull it slightly, and slide that in there for install. Kind of center it up and drop that back down. This will be retained by the grip module on final install. Okay, and now that is good to go. So I'm done with the PreTravel until later when we install the modified OEM slide cap. Okay, so I'll set my PreTravel kit back aside for a second. Okay, I was done with Sear control and I've kind of got a mess there, so I will set that aside. Okay, my OverTravel, I'll move on to that now. My OverTravel stop, your parts will look slightly different. They'll look a lot cleaner than this. This is a developmental one, but it comes in a 3-layer stop, and it can be adjusted if you need it. If you're not getting a clean break or whatnot, you can just simply bend off one of the layers, and then you'll have 1-layer and 2-layer, and then you can keep both of those as an option for OverTravel reduction. Okay, so the one thing that you can do to make this easier is you can put a drop of oil right there at the back on the fire control unit, right under the trigger shoe. And then that will kind of keep that in place. So I will do it the harder way by not doing that. And I'm just going to hold it like that. And that's the right location for it. See the orientation. These grooves line up with the grooves. You'll kind of see it's right like that. Now the grip module is going to completely retain this. If there's a little bit of oil under there, it will keep it from moving around as I go to install the grip module. So now I'm ready to reassemble with the grip module, and I'll just put the grip module in, the trigger shoe in first, and I'll hold the grip module kind of steady. Okay, and then I'm going to push that down, and then I'm going to just kind of look in there and verify that my OverTravel stop's in good, and then I'm just going to rotate it. Okay, and there, now I can look in the trigger guard and see my PreTravel stop, my OverTravel stop, everything has been retained now. Now I just install my pin, and now I am ready for the upper. Okay, so my lower is complete at this point, unless I want to do adjustments later. We'll come back for adjustments either at the end of this video or maybe even a more detailed adjustment segment in another video. Okay, and then with that, I'm going to come to my slide now. I'm going to remove the slide cap. So there's two different styles. This is the old style where I can just use a flat screwdriver and push straight down. The newer style, you have to push this piece to the side and then in, and then the slide cap will remove. So this one's just the more simple version where I just push that down. Okay, and that's under tension, so I kept my finger there to grab that. I'm going to remove my my striker assembly, and I'm going to hold that the striker safety. I'm going to hold that because it's under spring tension, and then I'm going to release that, and then I'm going to let the spring come out, and I'm going to retain my spring for later as a option for pull weight. Okay, So now I'm going to go to my pull weight kit, and there is a reduced powered striker safety spring. I'm going to grab that spring. Okay. And then I'm going to install that spring in place of the stock spring. Okay. And so I like to get it in that channel within the striker safety, line back up the orientation, and install. Okay, so I've got it, and I can kind of feel that it's moving freely back and forth. Now it's retained once the striker assembly is put back in place. Okay, striker assembly is in place, and I'm pressing that to see the function. It's blocking the striker with that notch. Okay, so that's all good. So I'm going to, at this point, just leave the slide cap off so I can quickly move into the safety and margin reliability checks and whatnot. So I'm just going to, put my takedown lever in position, make sure my safety lever's down. The first step on the safety check, before I actually install the slide, is I'm going to check to make sure that my Sear spring and my Sear is moving back upwards. That's the first thing I'm going to check. So that all looks good. Nice upward tension from the spring. Looks like everything's seated right. My safety lever is moving correctly and all that. So that's good. Okay, now I'm going to install this, and I'll just kind of be careful with that striker assembly. Okay, install, and I'll put the slide catch on, drop the takedown lever. Okay, so there. Now I can hold that down, and I can view in here my my Seer engagement with the striker. So here I've got, to better demonstrate what you're looking for, I've got a striker. So this is the striker face here, and here's the Seer face. On the Seer face, there is a line of that Seer interfacing surface. You want to ensure that that Seer interfacing surface is always fully covered by the Seer face. So that's what you're going to be looking in for. So if I'm looking from the side, it would look something like that. Okay, and that, if it's just a hair edge, that's not okay. I want that striker face to be completely covered. Okay, so there's the stock, and then you're going to be somewhere kind of in that region and slightly reduced so that it's always covering that striker or the Seer face. Interfacing surface on that Seer and the striker. So I'm going to look at this one, and you need a really well lit area. On this camera you're not going to be able to see it, but I can look in there and I can see that line. As I start to pull the trigger slightly, I can see that line was completely covered by the striker. Okay, and then if for some reason I wasn't able to get the trigger to break, then that would be an indication that maybe I need to adjust my OverTravel stop. And I could either stop at this point, adjust my OverTravel stop, reassemble, and move on, or I could go ahead and, if I did get it to break, then I can do the adjustment later. So now that it's passed, now I can move on to checking the striker safety. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my tool. I'm going to press the back of the striker, and it's being blocked by the striker safety. I can feel that in there. Okay, and then I'm going to observe the travel distance until that striker safety is defeated. You'll see my right hand move when that happens. So there is about 1/8 of an inch. So anything more than that now at this point should be fine. Okay, there it just moved. So probably about 3/16 of an inch. Okay, now for reliability, I'm going to find kind of okay, there's the interference point, and then as I push, there's a good 1/16 inch still, and so I know that there's no striker safety interference with the firing pin to steal any firing energy or anything like that. So that all has passed those safety and reliability checks. So now at this point I can just lock back the slide, and I can install my modified OEM slide cap. And so this is an optional part, and that allows me to take down the slide without having to remove the back plate. So you don't necessarily need this part. It just has a a modification at the edge here. This one's really exaggerated. This was one that we used in development, and it will show up better on the camera, so that's why I'm using this one. Okay, so to install that, I might have to depress the striker safety just slightly to get that to move in. Okay, then I'll press that in, the striker sleeve, and then install the back plate. Okay, the back plate is installed. Now everything should be good. Now I can function check and see, okay, so my PreTravel is nice and short. There's my wall, hard wall, and there's my brake and my reset. So I will look at my PreTravel to wall distance, yeah, about just over an 1/8, 3/16 kind of range. Then my brake, or my wall to my brake, is about a 1/16 inch, maybe a hair more. My reset's nice and tiny, so if I wanted to adjust anything at this point, if I wanted an even cleaner brake than that, shorter, which there's really not a reason why you'd need it on a defensive pistol like this, but this number 3 Sear control spring is giving me a little bit of a feel of a roll to it through the brake. I can kind of perceive a little bit of roll off in the brake. So if you like that, the higher numbered springs will give you more of the roll. The lower numbered Sear control springs will give you more of that crisp feel. But as you use the lower numbered springs, you need to really be careful to ensure that you've got that full Sear coverage that we're looking for. Okay, and so that completes the basic install, and then now we'll move on to any adjustments that might be necessary. So with that, the simple adjustments, say I was getting a little bit of hesitation at the end of my brake. See, I was able to get that to roll a little bit. So I'm right there, right before my brake, and say it was hesitating a little bit. This one's really quite clean, but say I wanted a little bit more OverTravel for a more clean brake. All I need to do is go in and take the gun back down. I won't do that right now, but I would just remove one of the layers off of the OverTravel stop and reinstall just like that. Once I remove those layers, it's just a simple bending of the layer, and then it will just cleanly break off. You get 2 OverTravel stops. You can use one or either of them to reinstall as an option to feel. If I wanted to increase my pull weight, I could change out my striker safety spring. That safety spring has lightened my PreTravel, so it will give me more of a feel of a dynamic between the lighter PreTravel to the hardness of the wall. So that will give me that perception of a really clean wall and brake that will help with that spring combination. Also, the OverTravel can give you a little bit of a perception of a cleaner brake. So sometimes, even if you've got the right amount of OverTravel, you might, for the gun, you might want to increase it just slightly by removing a layer to give you more of that clean brake feel. It will only increase your OverTravel just slightly, so that's an option for you. If you don't like the behavior of, especially for like this SAS model here, if I wanted to take down the PreTravel's reduced to where takedown's a little bit more challenging, so you have to use a tool on this model. So there, I'll push that. Okay, so now I go to release, and that's not releasing. So I've got to kind of play this trick where I'm holding the slide back, and then I'm gonna turn it more until that slide stop releases. Okay, then I can take it down. So that's a little artifact that if you don't know about it, that could be kind of annoying for you. If you want to increase your PreTravel, it will add about a 1/16 inch of PreTravel. To remove one of the layers off of the PreTravel stop, you'll do that with a knife. We'll probably show that in a different video for the adjustment, and that will eliminate that behavior if you want to get rid of that. But really, that's not that big of a deal. It's quite manageable to deal with if that's what you're looking at. Okay, so that concludes the video for today, and thanks for watching.